Howdy folks, AJ coming at you again, your resident vintage gamer, and today is Gary Gygax Day, and it's been called Gary Gygax Day, it's been termed Gary Gygax Day because this is Gary Gygax's birthday. And of course he's no longer with us, but because he left us with such a legacy, we still are going to celebrate it every single July 27th. So, in honor of that, I did a video earlier where I actually show some in-game footage from Dungeons & Dragons Online, Delara's Tomb, and that is the dungeon that Mr. Gygax actually narrated while he was still with us. He narrated it for the game, and you can still go through that dungeon with his narration. So if you want to, I will put an annotation here somewhere. If you want to follow that, you can see my video of the in-game narration for Gary Gygax Day. So, and in honor, I'm wearing, of course, my Gygax magazine shirt and everything in honor of that. So, that leads me into the next topic. This is probably going to be a long video because I've got a lot of stuff to show, but everything ties in together, and it all starts with a computer game called Pool of Radiance. And this came out in 1988. I was in Germany serving in the Army when this came out. And this one that I have here is for IBM. But the first one I bought was for the the Commodore 64. So I ended up buying both versions because I ended up getting an IBM when I got back stateside, and the disc swapping that you had to do with the Commodore 64 was much lessened with the IBM version. So I ended up buying another version. Now, the reason that I bring all this up is that I recently, this weekend, found out that I can play these again through DOSBox. It took most of all day yesterday to get it all configured, to make it work and everything. So this is either going to be an extremely long video or it's going to be a two-parter. I may show all of the physical components and everything that ties in to this franchise. I may show all of that and then do a second part where I do the in-game footage, or I may, depending on how long this goes, I may decide to just cut it and then add in the in-game footage at the end of this, depending upon time. So, but basically, this was the very first computer video game that was based upon Advanced Dungeons & Dragons rules. Now, there were video games that were for consoles that had the Dungeons & Dragons label on them for the Intellivision, etc. But this was the first computer game that used all the rules. Hit points, spells, you know, all the combat, everything is integrated into these games. And these were called the Gold Box series, for obvious reasons, because they came in a gold box. This series, it was set in the Forgotten Realms setting, and it had 4 volumes. Because of the success of this one, they made 3 more. So there was 4 total. So you had Pool of Radiance, you had Curse of the Azure Bonds, you had, then followed by Secret of the Silver Blades, and finally you had Pools of Darkness. Now, you could transfer your characters from one game to the next. So by the time you got to the 4th one, you could have the same characters. They did have that ability to transfer characters all the way through. So let me start off with the translation wheel. This was what they used in the game for coded messages and things like that you would find. But the main purpose behind this was the copy protection back in the day. This is what served as copy protection, because to start the game, it would give you a couple of symbols, and you had to match, by turning these dials, you had to match the symbols up, and then you had to read from a particular line here. There's different holes here you can see. And so there's this line here, and there's this line down here that goes this way, and there's 3 different lines, and you had to basically use this to decipher it and put in the code, otherwise the game wouldn't start. And if you did 3 in a row that weren't the right one, it would kick you out, and then you have to start all over. So it was a very primitive form of copy protection. So, but then also in the game, it used it as a mechanic to decipher messages and things you would find in the games. So then you had the Adventurer's Journal, and you had that was the only map, pretty much the map you had right here. That was basically it. That's what you got. And what was in here was different things. As it progressed through the game, it would tell you to refer to adventure journal number, whatever. Like, you would find a dead body, and it would have a note on it. It would say, look up adventure, see adventure journal entry number 27 or whatever. If you were in a tavern, it might say you overhear tavern tale 6, and then you would have to look it up in here. And that's what this book was for. In addition, then you also, of course, got your quick start, a little quick start card that showed you. And you got a pretty nice looking rule book that went into, and it actually had a lot of the tables and stuff for right out of Dungeons and Dragons. And this was 2nd edition rules. And then this didn't come in the box. You had to buy this separately. Excuse me. But you got to remember, there was no internet back in those days. So if you got stuck, you know how now we're spoiled, and if we get stuck on a game, we just go to the internet and we can look up and find a walkthrough, or we can find a cheat code, or whatever we need, we can find it on the internet to get past that. There was no such thing back in that day. In that day, you either had to, and it's right in here, get a clue. You either had to call a 900 number and spend real money to get a clue from a hint line on the phone, or you had to have one of these. You had to have the actual clue book. And this would basically, if you got so hopelessly stuck that you were just stuck, you couldn't finish the game, you have to use this. And yes, I had this because, for obvious reasons. So, that's basically what you got in the box, along with all the discs and everything. And to show you just how absurdly fascinated I was with the Gold Box series and everything, apparently I kept the receipt. I bought 4 of them. Pool of Radiance, Curse of Yazur Bronze, Secret of Silver Blades, and Pool. I bought all 4 of them for IBM at one time, because I already had them all on Commodore, and I went in and bought all 4 of them for IBM. And then I bought the discs, the blank discs that you needed to save your characters on and everything, and a new joystick, because back in with this you had to use a joystick. It was the best way to do it. And I spent $132 at Babbage's. That's how absurdly obsessed I was with these games. So that's what that was. It started that whole craze, and you had 4 volumes here. Now, in addition, it also caused TSR to release an actual module called Ruins of Adventure. And if you notice, the picture's even the same. Ruins of Adventure and Pools of Radiance, and it even says on this little thing right here, it even says features the same background and settings as SSI's official AD&D computer game Pool of Radiance. So it just got that popular that everybody wanted to start cashing in on it. So they made a novel. Once again, Pool of Radiance. So you spurred all that, and then of course there was 2 more novels to follow that in a series. Pool of Twilight, Pool of Darkness. Now, remember I told you that this was the second volume in this series, Curse of the Azure Bonds. Had to make a module. Curse of the Azure Bonds. And again, this one says compatible with AD&D and second edition AD&D. And this one says it's based on the novel. Well, here's the novel. Azure Bonds. And of course, you can't have a novel without making it a trilogy. So then you had, you had to have 2 more. Song of the Sarios and the Wyvern Spur. These were known as the Finder's Stone trilogy. And even though it says this was based upon the novel, the Curse of the Azure Bonds was the second part in the Pool of Radiance series. So basically it all spurs from the Pool of Radiance. Then it goes even deeper. Put this stuff away. Then a few years passed. In the meanwhile, they've released more gold box games. There's a gold box series based on the Dragonlance series called Champions of Krynn, Dark Knights of Krynn, and Dark Queen of Krynn, I think. There's 3 of those. They released 2 more gold box on Forgotten Realms on the Savage Frontier side. So, and then SSI released some other box sets for Eye of the Beholder and so forth. It all spurred from this original game, Pool of Radiance. That's what started it all. But then years passed, and they decided to do a reboot. This was done through SSI and Ubisoft. And they do a reboot called Pool of Radiance, Ruins of Myth Draenor. Of course, I had to have the collector's edition, and you can see how big this sucker is. Of course, you guys know me, collector edition moron. I've got to have the collector's edition if I buy it. And this, by the way, is a beautiful box. I mean, it's got gorgeous artwork all the way around. And when you got the collector's edition of that one, of course, it had a new novel. Completely by different author than the first Pool of Radiance book. It had a set of dice in a dice bag. Of the polyhedral dice, just for D&D. And then, of course, you got the soundtrack. And, of course, they couldn't let it go without doing another module for Dungeons & Dragons. So they did a tie-in module. So you ended up having another module. So you had Ruins of Adventure, Azure Bonds, second Pool of Radiance modules. You had 2 series of novels. This novel, soundtracks, poster. I'll even open this poster up so you can see it. This poster's actually a really nice one. It's actually a map, but it also serves as a poster. Alright, let's see how we got here. So there you go. And let's do it like that. So you got a nice map out of the deal. And that is basically all that was spurred by that original game, Pool of Radiance, back in 1988. And you talk about immersive. And when you see the gameplay, I'm probably going to do a 2-parter because I'm already at 15 minutes here. When you see the gameplay, you'll see how simple it is compared to what we have today. But back then, there had been nothing like that. There had been nothing first person as you're walking through, and it had a separate mode for combat, and you did everything from you went into shops and bought and sold your stuff, and you could trade between and you could make all your characters. You had 6 characters in your in your party, and you got to make and customize all of them, and it was awe-inspiring at the time because you felt like you were in D&D in the computer, and you'll get to see the gameplay when I do that part, and so I'll definitely make a second part because there's no way I'm gonna tack it on now because we'd be doing a 30-minute video or 40-minute video or something. So anyway, guys, that's the end of part 1. I will catch you guys on the flip side.